All right, everyone, welcome to the AI Conformance Working Group. Today is August 21st, 2025. Before we begin, just a quick reminder that this meeting is governed by the CNCF Code of Conduct. We're committed to a respectful, inclusive, and harassment-free experience for everyone. Please be kind, constructive, and supportive to one another throughout our time together. And if you have any concerns, feel free to reach out to a moderator privately during or after the meeting. All active developments are discussed in this meeting or in the working group AI Conformance Kubernetes Slack channel. Please join that channel or the mailing list to get access to the meeting notes. I noticed some folks are still probably don't have access. All right, and just a reminder that this meeting is recorded and publicly shared. Please use a Zoom chat to raise your hand or ask questions. With that, let's look at the agenda. Before we dive into going through the rest of the conformance doc, just want to kind of call out that we are currently soliciting feedback for a potential tiered AI conformance program. The idea would be something along the line of a baseline whereby the product must meet all the musts as we have today, and a plus status, which basically the product would need to meet some or all of the shoulds. That way they can be recognized for the higher tier. This could potentially give contributors and vendors a way to demonstrate progress beyond the baseline while still ensuring interoperability. Really curious your thoughts. Please chime in. And there is currently a Slack thread that you can link to. I see some hands up. Sorry, I actually can't tell who raised their hand first.
I think Ben did. Go ahead.
I was gonna let Bruno go first.
For it.
Okay, sure. I can take this. I feel like it may be premature to talk about tiers till we get to a state where we have a conformance suite for each requirement. And we punted a lot of musts to shoulds last time because we believed they weren't ready. So from that perspective, I think we should only consider a tiered approach after we have some basic suite for all the musts we're talking about. That's all. Thanks. Ben.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna point out. I think there's two things. One, for Gateway, they maybe had a little bit more reason to pursue this because network situations that exist beyond Kubernetes are so varied to begin with that it's kind of hard to guarantee that everything will be fully portable. But in the core conformance program, we had a bunch of discussions about this in the past, and we wound up eliminating any profiles or tiering because it's confusing to users. Like the situation where we have APIs that users need that aren't in core Kubernetes already makes things a little bit confusing about if I have certified Kubernetes 133, do I actually have everything I need because things like CSI and Gateway aren't included? It gets even more confusing if you start adding tiers to conformance, and I think it devalues a little bit the vendor achieving the higher tier because most users aren't going to understand the distinction. Once we have to start explaining like a list of APIs or something like that, I think we've lost the plot.
Mario.
Yeah, the initial idea about this was because I think I don't know if it was 2 weeks ago or if it was last week. There was like the idea of focusing on use cases, right? So we have the whole AI conformance has the topic that there are various topics to cover. It's like training models, hosting models. So everyone basically has different things that they want to do on those conformant clusters. And the idea or an idea was that with those tiers, you can basically say like, hey, these solutions are focusing on, or these solutions are good for hosting a model or for training a model and stuff like this.
Leor.
Yeah, I'll throw my head in the ring and throw another wrench into this, Rita, some of the things that you and I discussed privately. When you start thinking about the type of infrastructure you're running on, that adds another layer of complexity. I'm here just, FYI, I'm here to represent like more of edge use cases, not edge cases, more like edge infrastructure. So that brings another dimension into this. For example, if you're running on a single node, I don't even, care as a customer about the CSI driver. Just an example. So the reason that I'm bringing this up is because there is a need for us also to identify, okay, how do we think about different type of infrastructure, hyperscalers, large scale, edge computing, single node, SFF that is running K3S, like all these options are super relevant. So yet another layer for us to think about here. I don't have all the solutions, obviously, but I do want to point out that it are things that I'm looking into.
Right, and I just want to kind of highlight that since I was the one that proposed a tiered thing, in my mind, even baseline would have things that would still be not applicable, right? For certain as you said, edge cases, or sorry, edge
Right.
use cases. Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't think baseline or not is a good divide for not applicable. I just want to be clear about that. Yeah. Ben?
So two follow-ups to that. For Mario's point, I think if we're talking about, training versus serving or that sort of thing, that those are just different and they're not like tiers. I think tier might be the wrong way of framing that. You might say instead of AI conformance, there's like training conformance or something like that. It doesn't make sense to say that you're building up tiers for like orthogonal things. And to the point about the single node and edge, it's worth pointing out that if our baseline includes conformance, you can't certify conformance with a single node because we need to test rolling node behaviors and make sure that those are compatible across vendors. Like the existing conformance tests, you need a minimum of 2 schedulable nodes and have needed that since 1.14. So that, that may wind up being something of a different problem.
But like say single node, like say, I mean, I'm just using that as an example, like disaggregated serving, right? It wouldn't be applicable there, right?
I'm not arguing one way or another for the AI conformance, but there previously been discussion about including like the existing Kubernetes conformance program, and the existing Kubernetes conformance program already has a like bare minimum of 2 nodes necessary to test. So like yeah, that's pre-existing.
Can I chime in for a second? Just I see a hand, but can I just react to that? Is that okay?
Sure.
I would say that I understand like that there is a minimum bar of 2+. I get that. I think that there is a bit of a different kind of approach that I'm thinking about in the context of not approach, but like how I think about customers that want to use this type of stuff. I think that declaring that a single node is not valid for conformance is going to be problematic on multiple levels. I mean, expecting remote locations, colo locations to have multi-node clusters just for the sake of running AI workloads, especially the ones that are just using like smaller models and just do basic function callings on a single node. I would challenge us to think about it a bit harder and not just think about it in the context of there is the basic conformance that is saying, okay, 2+1. All I'm saying is that it's very expensive to buy multiple nodes with an A4500, GPU. So anyway, just some thoughts.
All right, in the interest of time, sorry, actually, let me get through all the hands and then let's get to the next topic in the interest of time. Go for it.
So I think I just want to talk to the earlier point around use cases. So I think it'll be important to clarify what the use cases are, whether this is training, inference, tuning versus agentic workloads. And I think when we discussed the requirements around agentic, they were more forward-looking. So it'll be good to have a stance on that. Like for example, like your agent is a normal container. It doesn't need access to a GPU as long as it can hit an LLM API endpoint, which could be on a separate cluster, same cluster, or hosted somewhere else.
Mario.
Yeah, what I quickly want to make clear, because I think there's a little bit of misconception, and this also goes into the direction of Leo. We are talking here about not a certification if you're running a cluster or an edge cluster or something like this. We are talking here about the certification and the conformance of Kubernetes distribution, which means that you can run a single node Kubernetes cluster, and you can potentially also run a single node Kubernetes cluster, which is conformant on a single node. But that's not the goal of the distro. We are here talking about distros, and that's also regarding to one thing in the question in the chat. It's not like what an end user is running that this gets a conformance there. It's like what products are out that offer a conformant Kubernetes solution. And I think this is something that we all need to keep in mind.
Yeah, that was my follow-up point from the chat. It's not scalable for the CNCF to certify all clusters out there, so that's not happening. We're certifying the tooling so that users know that the tooling will behave properly. So we need to know how it behaves when there's multiple nodes, but the users can absolutely take that and create a single node cluster. So, I think the short version is we summarize distros and install tools, not clusters.
All right. I think we said we want to time box this, right? So let's. I think I'm sure there's more feedback here. So if y'all don't mind, just click on that link and let's continue this in the chat in the Slack channel. So that we can make more progress on this call. All right. Sounds good. All right. The next topic is we're also soliciting feedback as we talked about in the last week's call. We're soliciting feedback for a conformance program for DRA drivers. Again, the links are there. And please share your feedback on Slack in that thread as well. But we're not going to spend too much time on that here. I think there might be future discussions around this in the DRA working group. All right. With that, let's go back to the open questions doc. Just checking the chats and make sure folks are good. All right. I think we stopped at number 4, right? I know, I think someone put a check mark here, but I think there were still some comments here remaining. Specifically, there was some comments around what if I'm not using Prometheus as the solution that collects metrics. Anyone wants to, or folks who's added comments here, feel free to chime in. Or maybe you're not on the call. Okay, let's see. I guess real quick, just from the last call, like since this particular requirement does call out capable of discovering and collecting metrics from the workloads. And as you can see, we put an example for Prometheus. Are we all okay with this as a must? Okay, Max says yes. Any more comments?
Yeah, my only suggestion is in addition to Prometheus as an example, you might want to put OTel in, another CNCF project. Just to give equal coverage, I think, across our graduated projects in the space. But since they're examples, that's my only thing is to suggest those.
Yeah, I think my concern with this is how to test this. As even though we're not working on the test itself, but the goal here is eventually we want to be able to have some way to validate, right? And if folks are
But if
using
Prometheus, yeah, I was just gonna say Prometheus is an example, then that doesn't mean it's the requirement to use Prometheus. And somebody could use an entirely different system and still qualify for this, and then you'll run into the testing problem. And if we're going to use examples, it's probably good for us to use the examples that are other CNCF graduated projects would be good ones to use as examples. And we have two of them here with the OTel interface and Prometheus. And at least for examples, if you want to look into testing and being able to write tests and knowing one, then these can't be examples if you want to be able to script tests to them.
I don't know who raised their hands first. Is it Leor or is it Janet?
Janet first.
Okay, so I think for this year, we can just do self-certification, so we don't need to worry too much about the test. But then I agree that it's going to be a challenge next year when we want to add some conformance tests. So I have some nascent idea about how we can do those kind of almost non-deterministic type of test. So I have an idea. I have a proposal that I put in the agenda. So maybe we can leverage some of the LM eval technique for those kind of tests. For example, deploy an agent that could run the test for you so that it can discover the metrics and or the task or the goal you want to achieve instead of just relying on checking some API that could be complementary to our existing test. But that's just a very early idea. We can just keep exploring and brainstorming on how we can do that. And I can post a link to that doc in the chat so that you can all take a look.
Okay, so given this, like, do we think this is okay as a must?
I think for this year, given we are doing self-certification, I think it's fine. And when we're doing the test, we need to figure out the strategy and maybe revisit some of the requirements if we find that it's really hard to test.
Leo, you still have your hand up? Is
Yeah.
it related?
I'm just wondering, and maybe someone can educate me on the thought process, but how is this specific to AI? Like, wouldn't you consider metrics as just, a certificate or a conformance certification? Like, I'm trying to understand if there is an angle here that is specific to AI, since we're talking about AI conformance. And I think that the point that Janet, you were making is kind of a proof to that I'm not sure if it's specific to AI because the scale of testing is going to be impossible. like literally. If you think about the exposure of metrics across the board, with the rate and the pace that this space is moving, I don't know if we will ever be able to say, okay, metrics this or metrics that. I understand that there's needs to be a solution that, Prometheus for that matter, but I'm still not sure. And again, it could be it's just a me problem, but I'm trying to understand how is this specific to AI.
Mario?
The idea behind this is we are not, or we are focusing here on a platform for hosting AI. It's not so much about the essence of AI. It's like guaranteeing that Kubernetes is the platform of choice to run AI workload. And to run AI workload, I mean, we know that we potentially have GPUs and TPUs and stuff like this, and they have specific metrics that we need to watch to ensure that those stuff is running, so that we can basically have an educated choice. For example, okay, I have a node with a GPU and I have a node with GPU and CPU, and the GPU is for whatever reason failing. Then my cluster is not working for AI workload anymore. And basically, to ensure that we have the discoverability of a platform that or that a customer or some person that wants to run AI workloads and don't want to think too much about a whole platform approach, that they can be sure if I have a platform which is conformant for running AI workload, can be sure that there is a way to monitor and to observe AI workload or resources that are needed to running inside of a cluster for AI workload. Did this help?
So a follow-up to that, in the spirit of what I believe, George, you said in the chat, which is like we're here to validate the vendors that want to sell a solution, right? So if I'm thinking about what you're saying, should I have a Prometheus or a Grafana for that, as an addition to that, as part of my solution that I'm selling, or I should just be able to say, no, it's Kubernetes, it support Prometheus. Like, which one is it? I'm trying to crystallize that in my head.
That's basically the essence to come to this is exactly this question. What do we want? Do we want to be with this conformance kingmakers, which means that we elevate Prometheus as a de facto standard into this, or do we want to be generic?
Okay, thanks for clarifying. I'm just trying to educate myself on the thought process, that's all.
And I think it's to minimize the amount of work that users of that cluster will have to do, right? So to your point, like I could install Prometheus myself, right? But if the cluster or the Kubernetes offering already did it for me, that's less work for me. And I think the goal here is to reduce the amount of work that people have to do. All right, any other comments for this one?
Sorry, one question rather here is if you're talking about trying to reduce the work for users to be able to observe these metrics specific to AI workloads, do we also anticipate vendors be able to provide a solution for maintaining the life cycle of certain like metrics exporters? Like, are we saying that vendors should be able to handle, like, for example, the DCGM exporter installation and collection of the metrics that are exported by these exporters? Or is that not an immediate or even a future need?
I'll take a stab at this. I remember, I think we have something, and maybe this is a should right now. More importantly, because I think that's vendor specific, right? And I think we should try to strive to be vendor agnostic. Doesn't mean you can't, but it's how can we define again the baseline without being vendor specific. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So we're saying that we do not want to force the requirement of handling the exporters also.
Yeah, I don't remember which one it was, but I think it was here as one point, and then I think it became a should. Might have been this one, actually. Yeah, well, no, not that one.
Oh, is there a hand also?
Any other, Lyra, your hand is up. Did you have a comment? Okay. Okay, anything else about this one? If not, let's move to the next one. I think the consensus was keep it as a must, right? All right, let's go to the next one. Precondition to fulfill requirements.
So this is not a specific change to existing requirement. It's more about clarifying why is some must requirement has a condition. Like, for example, if your cluster support cluster autoscaler or equivalent, it should support scaling based on the GPU or accelerator metrics. So that's it's being clarified that it's you can justify with not applicable. And then, so for example, for some platforms, they don't even have cluster autoscaler. It doesn't make sense for them to implement that. And the focus is on supporting AI workloads for scaling up and down depend on the accelerator instead of just CPU or memory. And that applies to some other requirements as well.
Which one is this one? Is it this? I'm trying to.
And I think it's from Maciek. If you click on that, do you see his comment?
Sorry, click on which one?
Yeah.
Okay.
From this comment.
Okay, so let's see. You're trying. Go for it. Sorry, I'm not watching the hands up. Go. I think you're the only one with the hand up.
Yeah, no worries. So I think this is along the same lines as edge deployments. Let's think of a 3-node edge deployment that can do upgrades, and it has a fixed number of GPUs. That's a perfectly valid deployment pattern. You have a GPU or two attached to each node, and there's no auto scaling because you know ahead of time what your LLM is, how much GPU memory, how many GPUs it needs. So I'm finding it hard to have a must here. So are we saying if cluster autoscaler is enabled, then it's a must, or it should just be a should?
Can I answer this?
Go for it.
Again, same topic again. Yes, it is a valid case that you run this without cluster autoscaler, but the solution that the vendor is offering must be able to enable cluster autoscaler because you don't know, right? You can have scaling, though the customer can have scaling nodes, but it also he or she also cannot have scaling nodes. So the idea is that the solution of the vendor have the capability to use cluster autoscaler, and not so much it's like, yeah, that it's just there.
Can
So
I respond to that? Like, okay, forget even edge deployments. What about disconnected bare metal deployments where someone buys 100 or 1,000 without any auto scaling because that's what they planned for, that's what their budget is. So we cannot assume that the platform always supports auto scaling, right? Or
yeah,
for a
but
training job, you know ahead of time exactly how many GPUs you're going to need. It's when workloads are dynamically coming in and out, that's where you benefit from scaling up and down, right? So I feel having a hard requirement on auto scaling is probably not fair for those kind of deployments.
So that's why we have not applicable. So in that case, it will be not applicable. So you can say not applicable with justification.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, Janet, that's what I was trying to ask. If there's a way to opt out saying, okay, this doesn't
Yeah.
apply in this scenario. Okay.
Yeah, so all the edge scenarios, this will be not applicable, yeah.
How does that apply if someone runs in an air gap? Like as a vendor, you have an air gap solution and a cloud solution. Like, how do you say which, like, I'm certified for the cloud solution, but not the air gap solution, or is not like, I don't know how that would apply if your solution applies to both scenarios.
you're certified per product. You just don't certify all of it. It's per product. It's the same way like it is in Kubernetes Conformance.
I have one product.
Yeah. I think we don't make that distinction for the current Kubernetes conformance either. It's one product, but it doesn't ask like, is it air gap or not?
Okay.
I'm saying you're like I plus one to what you're saying, meaning it does not distinguish that.
Oh, yes, Justin said in the chat that it's per product per configuration. So a cloud deployment is different than an air gapped edge deployment.
That's my belief. I don't know how strictly we've enforced that, right? Like if COPS is conformant on AWS, are we magically conformant on GCP? Because we might not be, right? Like I don't know. I honestly don't know.
I can answer that. You have to document how that you set up the cluster and ran the conformance tests. So that part is public and documented. But as far as the like, you get to use the branding, you just have to show that the product is conformant. But you do need to tell everyone publicly how you configured the cluster, how you brought it up so that it should be reproducible. So that would include like, I ran this with the AWS settings.
Okay.
I wanted to jump on one of the comments made a short bit ago where somebody said, if you're running it on-prem and it's your product, you don't know if somebody might run it in the cloud. So you do need things like autoscaler. I actually want to say that sometimes you do. A vendor may come up with a product that says this is an edge stack solution for these use cases, and horizontal scaling is not there. So don't always assume that the product is going to end up being used in the cloud, and it could be used there, so it must meet these kinds of criteria. Sometimes assume, hey, this product may specifically target just certain scenarios, and it only needs to be conformant in those. And don't always assume the broadest, because some people do make just edge specific products, for example, and it's not designed to be used in the cloud and won't be certified there. So I'm just asking people to not make those kinds of assumptions as we evaluate these.
Yeah. Yeah, I made a note here, and also I think was it Justin who said let's make sure this is part of the FAQ going forward, because I think this is applicable to all of these requirements. Yeah. Okay, given all of that, are we all okay with this being a must? And that's this guy.
Shall we clarify the topics when it is not applicable in this section?
Yeah, I think we should clearly say that if something can be compliant if it says not applicable, if we're going to make this a must.
Oh, sorry, just to clarify, you're saying for each one of these items, you want to list the not applicable use cases?
Or do we have language around that somewhere that, oh, okay, if you have a dependency on cluster autoscaler and this kind of deployment, you don't have a cluster autoscaler. So you can still be conformant with an NA here.
So you can provide your own justification. There is a example questionnaire at the bottom of the other doc.
Yeah, and I think like Max raises a good point. Like, should not applicable apply to must? Or it should just be a should, right?
Would you clarify what that means?
If we end up in situations where for many deployment options, you end up answering half of the must as NAs, is that a good situation, or we should reevaluate whether the
So
such items should be shoulds instead of must?
So the answer to NA should not be something like I don't support this, so this is NA. This should be the case where the requirement. Take this as an example. The requirement is about we want the platform with auto scaling support to be able to scale up and down workloads based on accelerator usage. So if your platform doesn't support autoscaler at all, it doesn't apply to you, but the requirement is not about the autoscaling itself. It's about the accelerator part.
If I may, I think it would be, I think Rita nailed it. Like, if we have a must that has a well-known option to not comply, then we should call that out explicitly in that particular thing. It should be the exception, right? There shouldn't be that many of them. And in general, so like in this particular one, we'd say like answer NA if you do not support cluster autoscaler, right? And that is by saying that, we make it very obvious that this particular must has a condition where you don't have to comply type thing. And it isn't like, oh, I can just answer NA to everything and magically I'm AI conformant, right?
Yeah, fair. I think I think I was just going meta and saying, oh, okay, we should evaluate the entire list and see, oh, okay, how many of these have an NA opt-out? Perfectly fine with the stance on this one. Yeah.
I think we should do that, right? If there is a must that has an NA opt-out, we should document it so that it is crystal clear, right?
Right. Yeah.
I think that will be a good thing.
Just to piggyback on what you're saying, I think just simply saying because you don't support autoscaler is probably not clear enough still. Meaning, like, say in the air gap environment, like I still think that is the reason. Because let's say you're in public cloud, you don't support autoscaler. Does that make you a conformant? Probably not. Right? Yeah. So we have to think about how to word this correctly, and it's probably going to be a snapshot in time as we evolve this thing. Yeah.
I would argue that air gap would not be the requirement, because you can have auto scaling in air gapped environments if you have the given infrastructure around it. So that's the whole problem that I have with this argument. Air gapped is not a reason that you don't have auto scaling.
Justin.
I was going to say one thing we could do is slightly penalize people that try to NA the whole thing by saying, like, if you answer NA to one of the musts, you have to put it in your description of, your conformant configuration. I slightly suspect that most people aren't going to read it, but at least like there's some stick that says, hey, you really should be supporting faster autoscaler.
And this is what Jenna was referring to earlier. If you answer NA, you must provide a justification. So this is actually already doing it, or this YAML or whatever. Yeah.
But can we surface that more highly than like, a field buried in the YAML 200 lines down type thing?
Surface higher.
So like, for example, if my conformance has to say I'm conformant, and then there's a little asterisk, and I go through and it says on AWS when run with this particular configuration, we could also, or tested on AWS with this particular configuration, we could say tested on AWS with this particular configuration, and NA's like opted out of requirements around autoscaling because Justin's cool AI deployment system does not support autoscaler, for example. It's a little more prominent than just, yes, you're good type thing.
Okay, but I think what I'm hearing is like, yes, you provide the reasons and specify the product and configuration for why that's not applicable, basically, right? Okay. Jack.
I just wanted to point out, I think the clear distinction here is that for product offerings that have an autoscaler enabled in a non-AI use case, that's where we want to call out. We want to say that those product offerings are not AI conformant if the autoscaling only works on non-accelerator based input. So as Janet was saying earlier, like we're trying to be clear about the fact that we want to trigger autoscaling on accelerator device criteria. That's the AI contract. If a similar product offering triggers autoscaling on like legacy input, but doesn't on the device accelerator input, that's a cause where we can, I think, hold a firm line to say that product offering is not AI conformant. So it's just to be clear that the edge offerings that Mario are describing, which may totally understandable that there might be some greenfield infrastructure solution that does autoscaling in non-intuitive environments. The point is that if we want to call that AI conformant, it has to do that autoscaling equivalently on the novel accelerator device scheduling inputs, just as it does on the legacy inputs.
Audrey?
Yeah, just a quick question. Like I'm wondering, what is the kind of rational explanation why autoscaler is the must for AI workloads? Can someone tell me?
Because I think it's because it's a standard expectation for non-AI workloads. It is expected for Kubernetes offerings right now to support autoscaling.
So
And
why?
so then there are efforts being made right now to make autoscaling AI native. And so the idea is that we want to communicate to the user community and celebrate those vendors who have done the work to integrate those AI native solutions into their autoscaler solutions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because that makes sense. I'm curious, like, why we don't really push it to make this as a must for Kubernetes Conformance program then, right? Because GPUs can be utilized for AI workloads.
I think it's a recognition that the AI use case is autoscaling native, so to speak. Like it's dynamic, it's high scale, it's very expensive and difficult to maintain infinite numbers of GPUs forever. And so it's a native infrastructure habitat for AI use cases, I think that would be my answer to that question.
Yeah.
Max? Oh, sorry.
I would just comment that I think it definitely seems more focused around the accelerators rather than the autoscaling part of it, right? So if the accelerators are the part that is the must, whereas the autoscaling input is the sort of optional part of it. And so my hope is just that can be made super clear, perhaps in the wording, just that the accelerator is really the inputs that I think is trying to be driven rather than auto scaling itself.
Sounds good. We
Yep,
can update the language.
There was a question earlier about why isn't that in Kubernetes Conformance today? Because Kubernetes Conformance today only covers things that either are implemented in core or the API is part of core. So like ingress could maybe in theory somewhat be covered because there's an API there, but we don't really have exactly auto scaling APIs in the core types, and the auto scaler implementations are in other repos and not packaged as part of the core release. So that's one key thing about this effort is that this effort recognizes that for AI workloads, you kind of need things beyond what can reasonably be considered just part of core Kubernetes and needs to have expanded scope.
All right. So with all that, are we okay moving on and keep this as a must? Jack. I see thumbs up
Okay,
from
I
Matt.
see a thumbs up from Max. I was going to respond to Max's comment about the accelerator inputs. I think the important thing is, yes, accelerator inputs are super, that's the key. But if the equivalent inputs can trigger auto scaling, if the equivalent traditional inputs can trigger auto scaling, but the AI accelerator ones don't, that's where that product offering would not be certified as AI conformant.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's my understanding.
Okay, if there's nothing else for this one, we'll move on to network policy. Network policy, let me find this guy. So this is a should. So is the argument should it be a should versus a must? Is that right, Janet?
Yeah, so there's a comment from the original doc about adding it as a must.
I would probably argue against this because network policy is just one aspect of multi-tenancy isolation. Like, are we also going to require VMs then? Like, are we going to require confidential containers and all those things to actually ensure isolation? Because this doesn't guarantee that, right? There are many layers to that. So just having one particular aspect doesn't make sense.
Is this person on the call by chance? No, I don't see them. I guess anyone else who is +1 on making this into a must? Ben.
I was gonna say I really think we should talk to SIG Network about that. Like in the core Kubernetes conformance, they were pointedly excluded for a long time. I think that situation is a lot better today, and we actually have an upstream minimal implementation that should be pretty easy to deploy. But I think that like we should run this by SIGNet.
Okay. So then the follow-up is tag SIG networking folks on this comment and go from there. Does that sound good? Oh, sorry, Justin.
I think that's the right thing to do. I think in general, we don't believe that you really should be using network policy, I think. And I think SIG Network would agree with that. I think the AI people would be like, we don't think it's, a slam dunk type thing. And should is not a never. It's a, we don't think at this time it's the thing that we say, this is the right path to success. It's a, we're keeping an eye on it. It's a good thing, but we're not 100% convinced yet. But maybe in 3 months, right? That sort of thing. So it's not a no. I think should is appropriate, and I think in general when we come across these sorts of things where it's not a slam dunk that it must be that it should be that it must be a must, we should keep it as a should for now type thing.
Good. Jack.
What is the AI specific behaviors of network policy? Like, can we just bolt on the existing network policy implementation and run AI successfully? So the idea is simply that you just have a network policy installed, or is there anything AI specific that we're addressing here?
I think it would be, again, I think important to clarify what kind of workloads we are talking about. The situation here is, can my agent talk to an MCP server it's not supposed to be able to, for example?
Yeah, and as to your
still
point, Ronald,
secret.
there's more than
Yeah.
one way to do that.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
the point I'm taking from you. I
Yeah,
see.
yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
So, like, to me, if there's
Kubernetes, I
if
can
there's not a
figure it out.
specific evolution of like the network policy APIs which accommodate AI use cases, then I don't know how we would make it a must for AI conformance. Then it just becomes like a kind of like we have an opinionation about how you should run your Kubernetes cluster in general, and we think you should run those types of clusters to run AI workloads, which I don't think is what this is about.
Right, exactly. I mean, if you're serious about multi-tenancy, then you'll go way beyond this, right? Because this doesn't give it's not a slam dunk like what
I'm
Jeff
saying, yeah, like there's there's
Yeah.
also the false sense of security that this could provide people.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You may feel, oh, this gives me isolation when it doesn't actually.
Ben.
Yeah, I wanted to so on that. I think that there's also people that want really strong isolation because they're concerned about like securing their models and the weights and things that they think are sensitive, but that is a really deep topic that might be difficult to cover here.
And again, why is this specific, right? Like, shouldn't this be a common generic thing anyway? Like, why is it AI specific? Yeah. Any other comments about this? Are we okay with this as a follow-up and just keep it as a should for now? All right. Moving on. We have 3 minutes left. Let's see how far we can get. Split AI framework and operator enablement to, okay, let's see.
Yeah, I added this one here because someone left a comment saying that the testing instruction in how we might test it only mentions the validation of installation of those operators, but not without any instructions on how to test the limitations and so on. So maybe this can be split into 2 items. Like one is specific for like installation and operation, and the second can be like the limitation testing.
So the test and the how we might test it is just a way for people to imagine what the requirement concretely look like, to clarify maybe some parts that's not clear yet, but it's not definitely how we will test it. It's just a rough idea. Is
Yeah,
the question about the test itself, or
I think about the test itself, because the test itself doesn't include how you might want to test the platform limitations. Also, it may be harder to test the limitations, right? It's easy to test the installation, operation of those CRDs and so on.
So I think we're not adding tests initially for the self-certification process. And then I think for limitation, you can potentially showcase by just installing a representative operator or framework and prove that it can operate correctly and doesn't hit any limitation. So this is like the limitation, don't think too hard on it. It's just that you don't do anything crazy to cause the operator not working. So I know that maybe it's hard to prove the negative, but
Yeah, like I guess you have to really develop the operator carefully to make sure it's reliable and consistently. Like I think it requires more effort. For example, like fault tolerant and leader election and so on. Like, and make sure maybe there's no least cause that are disjoining the cluster. Like those can be a lot to test.
so this is not about the operator itself. It's about if the user want to deploy a representative AI framework on the cluster, they can do so without hitting any limitations. That's uncommon on the platform. So this is really a very generic requirement. So maybe we can figure out how we change the language to make it more clear, but this is not a very complicated one.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we can discuss offline.
Yeah.
But it sounds like this is the contention, right? This sentence. So I think Yuan, your point is just either remove it or take it out as a separate thing that we can track.
Yeah, as a separate thing.
Yeah, I think this is the sentence is sentence is where the hang up is. Yeah.
Around the limitation, you say?
Like the must not impose. I think it's hard to, sounds like it's hard to attest if they are or not. Is that right, Yuan?
Yeah, like any limitations can be opinionated and
yeah, I can see that.
Like they may be designed that way intentionally if needed.
We're at time. So let's pick this up and then next week. But in the meantime, let's think about this guy and if we want to break it out or not. All right.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks.